I'm Rev.Jessie Brandon, and I am a life cycle celebrant as well as a metaphysical minister, and you're watching Epiphanies. This is where I get to bring together my two greatest interests, people and books. So I hope you're in your comfy chair with a cup of tea or something, and we're going to talk today about the Mask of Masculinity. Now, yes, we've done this before. However, this time we are doing it as a direct result of the fact that we did it before, because our guest today saw it and loved it. And, well, she's going to tell you everything about that. So welcome to Dionne Thomson. And Dionne is a brilliant results consultant, the founder of In Her Element Consulting and the 100 Women on Fire movement. As a writer, artist, and mentor, she inspires busy women to get out of their own way and make themselves a priority in their own lives. She is most passionate about being a part of the epic shift that will occur when 100, 1,000, 100,000 women own their brilliance and permanently rewrite their narrative for the next generation. Wow, Dionne, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jessie. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Good. Well, okay, so we're doing Lewis Howe's Mask of Masculinity. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you.
Do tell, why did you choose this book?
Absolutely. So yes, I saw Alex Bello. He was on your show, and of course, in true universe style, it had popped up in my life a few times before that. Mm-hmm. And then when this came up, I thought, I'm going to watch this, and it was life-changing for me. His insight was extremely valuable, and when he shared that in the book they talk about, or Lewis talks about, that women have an entire community, they have groups, they have people they can turn to anywhere. I could stop a woman on the street and start unloading on her about how crappy my life is, and she'll listen, mm-hmm. because we have this social norm where we have this sense of community and connection.
Right.
And men have their wives. And that just hit me. I am married to a fantastic man, and I realize that, you know, for all of this that I'm doing and the journey that I'm on and the learnings that I've acquired and all this knowledge that I have, at the core of it, where vulnerability is strength, that is not the life he is living. And I wanted to be more of a support for him. I wanted to be able to be more present. I wanted to be more than the person I was showing up as, because I recognized it wasn't really aligning with my values. So I looked at this as an opportunity to put some more tools in my toolbox and to gain a few more strategies as to how to be the person I wanted to be with him. Mm-hmm. Recognizing that at this moment I may be the only one that has the opportunity to connect with him about whatever the issues are he is feeling.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you say that you realized he had no one but you, mm-hmm. so you stepped up even more, mm-hmm. did you talk to him about what it was like for him? At
the time, to be honest, this was, and what I've learned in my many moons of marriage is that everything that is coming up that I then direct at him is always about me. So this was very much about my learning, and I recognized that there was something in me stopping me from being able to show up the way I wanted to. And although I knew I was going to share the journey with him, mm-hmm. This was more about how I was going to learn something in order to then, what I ended up doing was breaking through some patterning that had been long-standing within me.
Okay.
And the resulting conversation down the road was beautiful and was fabulous, and there was a lot of really positive engagement from that. In our already great relationship, our communication is I would say, is our claim to fame as far as a married couple. But this was about the learnings that I needed to tap into. So yes, I talked to him about it, but at the time, it was almost like in secret. Like I went and bought the book, I got it delivered from Amazon, I read it by myself. Not that I hid it, but it wasn't about, hey, look what I'm reading for you. It wasn't about that.
It was about what it said to you.
What it was about for me.
Okay.
And
that's really cool, because I initially thought that this book was about men for men. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited to hear that it touched you in a way mm-hmm. that made you see some things about yourself.
Absolutely. And I too thought it was a book about men for men, and I was going, you know, to learn a few things, and but the learning that about myself, I did not expect. So,
is there anything in the book in particular that got you right off the bat, or there? Yes. Is there anything you want to read, or? It's not actually what's in the book. It's what where my brain went to after I read it. So, just to highlight, so the book covers the different masks that the stereotypical masks that men are sort of living into. And they're really focused on that idea of power and machismo and the invincibility and sexual drive and all of those things. And as I read, the way that he lays it out is he talks about each mask and then talks about the different layers within it and then what men can do in order to be able to survive within. And I recognize that the one thing that was missing from this was the experience of the good men who are wanting to not be those things but don't know how to be anything else. So very similar to a lot of the research that I've done about being a woman in the all the things generation. So, you know, being born in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s, we are of this generation where we are told, you can do it all, you can have all the things. And really what was missing from our upbringing was the tools to do that, to make the math work, to how to be the career woman, the mom, the superstar, the whatever. And so many of us are facing this anxiety and this stress around the shame and the shoulds of not living up to these expectations of women now. So, and trying to find balance.
Trying to find balance, right? And so I work really hard in that sort of container, and never acknowledged or realized that men live within the same container at the same time. So my self-identity, who I am as a woman, is very deeply based in my understanding of the dynamics between men and women from an early age. And looking at these masks, the one thing that I found really profound was all of the stereotypical women's traits that interweave with these masks. So my journey has been to break through and reject all the stereotypes of women, but I was not rejecting the stereotypes of men. I was actually living into them and keeping myself small as a result.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of one of those?
Well, the idea of men being powerful and invincible and the sort of go-to in a crisis, and then the alternative stereotype for women is that we're meek and we need men and that we need to be submissive, and then there's this little voice behind us, all the feminist voices going, yeah, but we're really in charge, it's totally fine, we're really in charge, but play small and make sure that this happens and this happens. And so like all these different stereotypical things that we're living within, and that, you know, those of us that are rebelling against it are, you know, standing firm in that, no, I'm an extremely powerful, independent, fantastic woman. But there's still that part, that very unconscious, completely out of my awareness, and this idea about what a man is. Now, I'm very fortunate that the part of me that is, I'd say, on the right side of all of this is the one that married the wonderful human that I'm married to. But my sense of identity as a woman was being held back by these limiting beliefs. And what this has done for me, has really given me that perspective shift that I crave always, about what the experience is for men in the shame and should culture that we're all doing together. We're, you know, men and women, it's a dance of humanity. We're not doing this independently. Right. You know, and there's so much great talk about the toxic masculinity and the impact on boys and girls and all of that. And I think I had sort of decided that because my husband wasn't the stereotypical anything of this toxic masculinity, that somehow he escaped unscathed. And I had these sort of judgments and ideas about what that meant, not recognizing that he too, and men just like him, are facing the same battles with shame and shoulds and not enoughness that so many women, me included, are facing. So.
That is amazing. That is great. I can't wait to reread the book because I think I missed a few things. I very much looked at it from the, okay, what will this, will this help men?
Absolutely.
And it went right by me as in, wait a second, how will this help me?
Right.
Because I realized the first time my partner cried, I was like, oh my God, what is wrong with you?
Right.
Well, why the heck shouldn't he express his emotions any way that is right for him?
Right.
So,
and that some of that self-talk, that I wasn't aware of until I started thinking, oh my goodness, so here I am, completely enlightened and aware and open and empowered. And I absolutely believe that men can, they can face their mental health issues and they can follow their bliss and they can do what feels right for them and cry.
Do they know that?
But then there's a little voice in my head says, yeah, but make some money. And and make sure that gets taken care of. Like there's still, it wasn't conscious, but what it was doing was dictating, as unconscious behavior, or unconscious thoughts do, dictating my behavior. And so there I was acting in a way that was not in my integrity and was not aligned with how I wanted to show up in the world. And then I was, doing one of these to myself going, what the heck? That's not who I am. Yeah. Where did that come from? And that all stemmed from this. And the other layer to this is that it really helped me to explore, again, my sense of who I am as a woman, having grown up in the same, acknowledging the same masks. And, there's a book in me that wants to come out and talk about these masks from the viewpoint of what I consider myself as a failing feminist. My experience of just trying to navigate this and empowerment.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say the failing feminist because I just discovered The Guilty Feminist and it's, have you seen it?
No.
Okay, well I haven't had the time, I've downloaded everything, but what I do know is that it's 3 women who are comedians and they're sort of poking fun at their own feminism because they realize that they're doing things that maybe feminists wouldn't like and they're saying things that way. So it's just interesting that you say almost the same thing as in the failing feminist. And, so tell me more about that. What does that mean to you?
Well, I want to be a good feminist. And there are thoughts and ideas that I have that I recognize maybe don't align with the true empowered feminist movement, and I feel very fearful about voicing these ideas that I'm thinking, where's that coming from? And it comes from this, not this book, but it comes from, again, the sense of identity that I, as a woman, that I created up against what a man, like the interplay of us as men and women. As a young person, I did not know that my power is here. That is not the story that I was told. That is as a young woman and what it is I needed to do in order to gain success in my life. Nothing overt, nothing blatantly said, but very much understood. And so then the narrative of my life has been that my success is based on things that maybe wouldn't be deemed feminist ideals, because that's...
Such as?
Such as, I worked in the restaurant industry for a very long time. It's fantastic. It did a lot of good for me. But the restaurant industry is more like an entertainment industry, and there were certain things said to me that I just completely accepted as norm as to how I needed to behave in order to make the money I needed to make. And I didn't question it. I not only not questioned it, I schooled other women on how to live into it, because this is how you do what you do. You use what you have and you get what you need. And all the while, I'm a highly educated individual with a lot of capacity for power up here, yet that is not how I saw myself. And the more that I look at that and say it out loud, I feel like I failed as a feminist. Now, again, based on my interpretation of what that is, and there's always room for growth and learning and all those good things, and I feel like I'm on a really positive trajectory for myself. But there's a lot that needs to be explored because I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, see, I don't even consider myself a feminist. I do think that I'm a humanist. I think we're all equal. I think we bring different things to the table, and I am tired of those things that you're talking about. I've told this story many times. I don't know if I've said it on this show, but when I was 17, I worked in an office, and my boss used to ask me what color underwear I was wearing every day, and I just laughed. Because what was I going to do? I never even questioned it. I never thought about, how could he be saying this to me? I knew I was embarrassed and ashamed, but that was my problem, not his.
Exactly.
And so that's, set the narrative, as you say, for my life as well. It was always about making others, particularly men, feel okay, laughing at their jokes, even if they denigrated me as a woman. So I would say that I have certain feminist beliefs, but I don't call them feminist. I call them humanist.
I love that. I really do. And your story, that snippet of your story, which I'm sure played out more than once, is extremely common. And my experience as well, and thinking back, as there's been a lot of conversation about this over the past few years, thinking back about who I was in that moment and the role I played in it, completely in agreement with everybody's behavior. Not because I was so far removed from my sense of self and intuition that had long since left me as a young person, not really understanding who I was or what made me happy, and really constantly looking outside of myself for value and worth, and needing to prove myself, and my happiness was dependent upon the expectations others put on me, and constantly living against a checklist. So when things went awry in that nature, where I was whether it was not necessarily assault, but there's something that is completely wrong happening here, I didn't even notice. And I didn't listen to anything that was happening in my body because I had long since tuned that out.
And do you think that's what women are most angry about, is the fact that these things were happening almost with, I hesitate to use the word permission, but you know what I mean? Like it's our complicity in it was that we didn't know, that we didn't have to put up with this because we didn't even know what this was.
And there's definitely some anger rooted in that for me, and along with the fact that I was such an active player on the wrong side. Like I feel like, I was playing into these masks, just this is the way that you do things.
And totally. I hear you.
And I'm sure you can relate to this. I'm an outspoken person, and I say what I think a lot, and I cringe at some of the things that I said out loud. Not more because it was so deeply entrenched in something that it was not actually who I was. And I mean, I can't regret. I can look back and learn. And so that's
all we can do. That's what the past is really for. Because our story isn't who we are, but it's the gold mine that we find things to learn about ourselves and to grow from and with and for. So
love that.
So I totally hear you, because I was sitting here thinking, although listening avidly, but I did have a couple of thoughts go through my mind about things that happened to me with older men when I was 13 or 14, and they didn't touch me, but the things they said, and I took from that I had power over them, but I didn't know how to use it. And it terrified me. And to think that a 13 or 14-year-old girl has those kind of thoughts going through her head, that you're afraid of the men around you because you know they want something, and you've got something they want, so you've got power, but what do you do? And
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I've been thinking a lot about why it's taken this long to pull away from some of these patterns and beliefs. And I think part of it is because I had power. And the thought that I'm going to rewrite my history and take all my power away, it is perhaps not something I'm ready to do, to look back and go, I was powerless there, I was powerless there, I was powerless there, and then what's gonna, just that sense of, ugh, like, ugh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how did this add to the work that you do? Because I want to talk about you now.
Awesome. A big part of why I do what I do is layered in this, in that I'm always looking to support women as they start to rewrite their narrative and be able to step out of that shame and should culture in order to align with however they want to show up in the world and their sense of awesome. So it could be from stay-at-home mom to hardcore career woman, anywhere in between, that letting go of all of the supposed tos and really being able to jump on and acknowledge and grant themselves permission to want. And that has been a big part of my entire journey, and this allowed for some of that. And it led into, so I read this in December, and although I had been sort of percolating an idea for an event, it was after this and a bit more research that I launched the 100 Women on Fire event that's in April. So
I want to be there. I haven't signed up yet, but I want to be there.
And it was based on this idea that yes, we need community, and we need to see how women in all walks of life are standing in their personal power, whatever that means for them. So whether or not it's in their volunteer work or in their career or in their families, but to be able to say, you know, I am aligned with my values, I feel connected to myself, I have rebuilt the relationship with myself. Like I said, for me, I had long since lost that, and it took me a long time to learn how to listen again. And the one thing that I found the most powerful, which I'm sure you know, is when you're around other women who are in that zone, it's so empowering. And to be able to gather with women who are at different stages of the journey, going in different directions, and to just go, wow, she's doing that? I didn't even know that was possible. She's doing that? I didn't even know that was possible. And so I wanted to bring as many women together as I could. And I started putting it out there, and I realized I have a really great community of brilliant women. And so we have 4 speakers, and I've invited vendors to come and showcase their businesses, all under this idea that they too have a story that they're looking to share. So yes, they're going to sell great things and services and products and ideas, but more importantly, they're there to share their story and their journey from being stuck to spectacular. And so this, along with a million other books, many of which I see on your shelf, have really fueled this, and I'm so excited. I was talking to one of my vendors yesterday, and she runs a company called No Borders Fitness, and it's just fabulous. And she's like, it's so great that you're doing this, and you're jumping into it. I'm like, it hasn't even crossed my mind that it's not going to work. This just feels so right and so aligned with me and the work that I do.
I love that, because I really find a lot of the women I know, myself included, are saying, does this fit with who I am? Am I doing what I think I'm here to do? What gives me so much joy?
Right.
And then aligning themselves with that. And I just love that. And whether that is, as you say, a stay-at-home mom, God love them. I mean, I stayed at home for a little while, and I only had one child, and God bless the women that had a whole lot more, because I was driven crazy because I wanted to do something else and something more. My daughter, you know, no harm intended to her. I loved her to death, but it wasn't all that I was.
Right.
And I love women who can fully embrace that and be. I have a friend right now who says, my job is to be home and raising young women who know who they are. And I just, you know, God bless her. And
my addition to that, as I work from home with 2 small children, so I'm not stay-at-home mom, but I'm there all the time, that in order for us to really empower the next generation, we must be modeling it, because kids are fantastic mimics and terrible interpreters.
Yes.
So, you know, I lived through the generation of my mom saying, you can be anything, while she lived into the stereotypes she grew up in, doing the absolute best she could with what she had. But I ended up being in a space where I'm like, yes, I can do these things, but I want to be like my mom, and not sure how to really maneuver through that. So I think the best gift we can give our children is to be the people we want them to be.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, another thought went through. I'm a whole generation older than you, and when I phoned my mom to tell her that my marriage had broken down and we were separating, she asked me why, and I was going to college to become a human services counselor. And I said, well, because I've changed so much and he doesn't like me anymore. And she said, then change back. Because you've got your house and you've got your cottage and you've got your vehicles and you've got your yearly trips.
Right.
Don't mess with that.
Right.
He'll take care of you. And it broke my heart, and it made me so angry. But you know what? I didn't know how to be on the other side of that.
And definitely
it's taken me years.
Neither did she. Right. And so, you know, I recently did a talk with 45 teenage girls about finding their way and doing anything they want. And I took the conversation more to what it looks like to be happy and to recognize your own real happiness. And I saw so much of, you know, as I started to explore that story, so much of my parents. And I thought, you know what? Everybody's just doing the best they can.
Absolutely.
I don't blame a soul for any experience that I had, because I can't do anything about it now. The only job is to move forward from that. It's my responsibility, right?
Absolutely, Dionne. It's been such a gift to have you here. Tell me again, what is the name of your company?
In Her Element Consulting.
Right, and you do that to have women rewrite their narrative.
Absolutely.
As well as a whole bunch of other things. I so appreciate your time here with me today.
Thank you.
Fabulous conversation. Thank you for dropping into Epiphanies. I'm so glad you joined us, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.